Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our raw reaction review for Screamboat. Yeah, this one has been on our radars for a while. This comes from the director Stephen Lamort. If you've been around on the channel for a while, I know not many of you were at the time, but we actually covered his film The Mean One a couple years back. Was that 2022, 2023?
Yes.
That's where we first came across him, and we had our criticisms of it. We weren't the biggest fans of the film, but we got to talk to Steven. We got to meet him while covering that movie, and he's a really sweet dude. Really, honestly, one of the most genuine, kind people we've met throughout this journey. And I gotta say, I was excited for him because we knew a lot about this movie before they even started rolling camera on it, technically, because he'd been hinting to us that he'd been working on a project that was gonna basically encapsulate all kinds of new technology, new ground for him and his team, things they had never done. He wanted this to be a huge step up from The Mean One. And if you guys know us on the channel here, seems to be something with these public domain horror movies. We just get people who get into the driver's seat of some of these, and they just want to give it an honest to God real shot. And that's what Steven did here. And I gotta say, Screamboat, for me, this paid off in the best way possible. Luke, how you feeling about Screamboat?
Oh, I'm right there with you. Going into it, we've covered a lot of public domain horror films on the channel lately, over the past creation of the channel. Just one of those instances where it started really catching fire as we had started Splattercast. So naturally, we jumped on that train and decided to check them out. We really weren't expecting too much, I don't think, where it was kind of, maybe they're just fun little takes. But the storytelling has progressed really, and really giving more of a creativity, giving these creatives an outlet to really take that story that's already been established somewhere, not in horror, but then put that horror spin onto it. So Screamboat, easy sell. I think this one looked like a lot of fun from the very beginning. We talked to Steven. He had a lot of unique ideas. We were a little bit in the know, as much as you can be, in the details that he could give out. So we were rather excited about it, and really waiting for that trailer to drop, understanding some of the information that he was dropping toward our way. I gotta say, I was so excited to boot this one up and check it out, and I will say, waiting for it really did pay off.
Definitely. In a lot of big ways for me as well. I thought that this was certainly one that had a lot of pressure on its shoulders for me because, I wasn't a big fan of The Mean One. I've softened up to it a little bit as like a fun, throw it on for the holidays when I want some holiday horror. But, that movie, every time I go back to it, I'm just like, it loses me halfway through. And this movie I did not have that. From frame one, this legitimately feels like you're watching kind of like a 90s, kind of B movie, like a Leprechaun or a Pumpkinhead or something in that vein. And it feels like that in all the best ways. Like this really does have its very own style and voice to it that, we just haven't seen something like this in a long time. And I think the way they chose to, portray Steamboat Willie, the mouse, Mickey Mouse, the serial killer here, any attempt after this point is pointless. I mean, you have David Howard Thornton on screen here. He's 3 feet tall and he's slashing people to death. I mean, it looks incredible. I am so blown away by just how awesome. And don't get me wrong, when I say that, it is cheesy. It is very much supposed to look like a dated effect, and it does, and it's amazing.
Yes, this one, we've already checked out 2, I guess, Mickey Mouse public domain horror films, and they never really hit. It just seemed like there was a lot missing from those films, a lot left on the table, where you look at it and say there was a lot of potential here, but it was just missing some pieces. Screamboat, easily from the casting of David Howard Thornton, some of the trailer footage that we had seen, some of the stills that we had seen, their take in Steamboat Willie, it really seemed like this had all the pieces to really knock this one out of the park. All they had to do was really tap into that DNA. You mentioned Leprechaun, where those fun films where they're not necessarily scary, they have those gory, fun moments, and they really tap into the fun of the actual film. And that's what Screamboat does here. This really does feel Leprechaun's a great example. Critters, things like that, where you find the fun in those films, where you also find the horror, and they have this perfect marriage. So Stephen Lamort and the team absolutely tapped into that perfect DNA to really bring you a fun film that you're going to find gory at times, that, not necessarily scary. I think you find a little more humor in this one than you do some of the scares, but they build some tension. And when they do pay off in some of these wacky kills, man, it makes it so worth it. This one totally understood what it wanted to be and really does bring it to the audience.
Absolutely. And I will say, speaking of Steven and, just the team behind this, we actually did get to sit down with Stephen Lamort once again, of course, for this film. We weren't going to miss an opportunity. And yeah, we actually sat down with him and spoke for a little while about the film, as well as his co-producer and wife, Amy. We sat down with both of them and talked a little bit of Screamboat, kind of some of the stuff behind the scenes. We stayed away from spoilers for the most part. But if you want to check some of that out, it'll be at the end of this review, as well as we're going to be putting the full review into our Patreon as soon as that launches here in just a couple weeks. So yeah, that's how we got that for now. But yeah, I mean, taking a step back from just talking about the craft of the movie and just some of the stuff here, I think really the thing that really pulls this thing together, that makes this work so well, is David Howard Thornton. I mean, the guy, again, he comes in with a role that, damn it, I said it in the interview, I'm gonna keep saying it. This mouse is adorable. He's fucking adorable. He's hilarious. He's violent as hell, and I love every single second that he's on screen. He makes this movie for me, because I'm not gonna lie, everything else around it, it's okay. Like it's your stereotypical slasher. They do add some fun elements to the lore, I will say, of Steamboat Willie. They do some great stuff, but he's the shining star. He's what makes this full ticket price completely worth it for me. Like I'm in it to see him, and he delivers.
Yes, I think anyone sees David Howard Thornton attached to this, your intrigue is going to be piqued at that moment just to see the performance. And of course, just like Art the Clown, he delivers immensely in this one. There's so many fun, just little mannerisms that he does, the tapping of the foot, or putting his hands on his hips at times. Just a perfect comedic timing when we're in those gory scenes that really just kind of amplify the fun in this film. So he absolutely delivers into what he brings. I think, really taking the film and catapulting it into another level, because you can't really, it's like a Warwick Davis. We're talking about
Yeah.
Leprechaun, where he adds a different element to that performance, and you can't really see anyone else playing the character anymore. Where you said, a lot of other tries might not hit like Screamboat does, and David Howard Thornton is a big part of that big element to say, man, this is absolutely perfect casting. He brings those mannerisms. There are times where I said this isn't necessarily terrifying, but there are some mannerisms that he does bring, especially with the makeup effect, that we do see some of those close-ups, and just how he's able to, if you've seen Terrifier, say so many things without saying anything. I think he does that from scene to scene here in Screamboat and absolutely sells it. So, the kills are great on their own, but having him be that player and that facilitator in terms of the gore, and then his reactions afterward or even during, absolutely sells it. It takes this film from just putting a period at the end of that scene, he puts an exclamation point.
That's probably the best way you're going to put it. I mean, yeah, he absolutely brings his A game to this. And I got to say, the makeup is incredible. I think it really stands out for me. I was a little bit critical on that first image that was released. It didn't completely sell me. I was a little concerned, but once you see him in action and everything's moving, the effect, the forced perspective, making him look smaller than he actually is, everything works. And again, it has this dated, cheesy element to it that will make this thing stand out and damn near be timeless. I'm calling it now, because that effect, it works so well in the context of the film and just what they're going for. And it's just something that I'm going to admire every time I throw this thing back on. Now, I've been very loving and praising this film because I genuinely think this is going to be a blast for you guys in theaters. And I have one more element I want to praise, but I do have a little bit of a critique as well, and I know Luke, I think you share this with me that I think we can say on the whole, like this film, it shines with David Howard Thornton. It shines with just the scope of it, the violence, the gore. It's all there. It's fun, and with these public domain horror movies, these really smaller budget horror films, I think that the cast is doing the best they can with what they got. I don't think anybody here is necessarily a huge standout for me. The dialogue, it has its moments where it's pretty good, and then you have your moments where yeah, it's pretty much just paint by numbers. We're just getting the point across. There's a couple of jokes that I feel like kind of overstay their welcome a little bit amongst the human cast. But I mean, again, I'm there for Screamboat Willie. I'm there for the mouse slashing people, and that is just endlessly. I could do that again and again and again. I could have watched that for 4 hours. He was so fun.
Yeah, the comedy when we're talking in regards to the mouse or killer mouse, it absolutely works. I think, the timing there, the pacing, the gore, it absolutely is 100% what you're coming for. When you look at the human cast, yeah, I don't think there is a standout performance-wise in this one. It kind of just is you're looking at your basic slasher elements in terms of your cast and what you're getting from those performances. It doesn't really ask too much, and even some of the comedy doesn't necessarily hit. It kind of, like you said, I think best serves as overstays its welcome at certain times. And we're not really getting that big range in terms of acting, so we're not really in it for the main cast at all. They're not given a ton to do. It really is just kind of this fun scenario that we're in. So at moments, I think I can lose myself in the casting or just not having that range or really feeling that emotion. It really does lean more so into that B movie side of things where
Hmm.
you're not having this great cast where you're gonna see a lot of great performances and be astounded by them. This is more so just kind of a group of people running from a killer mouse. And yeah, I think performances do struggle at certain times, that sometimes they're a little more adequate, but they never really get to those top tier performances. But that's probably not what we're looking for when we dive into this film. We're just looking to have some fun. So I think you'll get some performances that are a little more eye rolly than others, but it doesn't really necessarily take you out of the film just because as you feel like it could be. Our David Howard Thornton shows up and really makes all is well when he's on screen. So, I think you do have a little bit of back and forth. You really do feel it more so when it is just all of our human characters. But once we get our killer mouse, I'll tell you the performance, the design, the prosthetics there, perfect imagery. I think it works so well. So I think, like we already mentioned, that really does carry this film. Some of the comedy's a little bit of a miss, but not offensive.
Absolutely. And I got to say, this comes from the producers of Terrifier. And, when we saw the mean one and that was being touted, we knew it was for the marketing. Terrifier 2 was absolutely eating everything up at the box office. All the money was going to Terrifier 2. And they're smart for doing that, but the mean one was a lot. I'd say 90% CGI blood. And it was very dissatisfying. It took what I think was a really good blueprint for something and kind of smeared a lot of, I guess, haziness on there that I didn't necessarily need. For this film, I'm not even kidding, guys, when I say that there are kills in here that I don't think quite get to Art the Clown levels, but they're getting pretty close. I mean, there are some pretty sick, gross, out of the box kills from our boy Willie here. I mean, it gets impressively gory, and I am happy to report that it is extremely, Luke, maybe a handful of things here and there, but I'd say that again, 95% of this movie is practical effects, blood and gore.
That was a big question mark going into this of how that gore was going to look. You look at the mean one, you can find yourself having some fun, but when you get to the CGI blood, depending on what you're looking for, I know our discussions, it kind of took us out of the film. It really prohibits you from really feeling engaged in those gory scenes. Screamboat, very practical. Looks like they're really going that route with it. It absolutely works in terms of being engaged in this scene. It doesn't take you out of it. It really feels organic. It doesn't feel kind of disjointed or jumbled in any sense. You're really able to be in awe of what you had just witnessed. And then as you get to the buckets and buckets of blood as the scene goes on, it just amplifies it. And I think they really found that happy marriage finally. with that film, because you could look at the mean one and say, man, if this was just more practical, this scene could work a lot better, and maybe that film would be looked at a little more positive. Whereas Screamboat, you don't have those issues here. There may be one or two scenes where you can tell, but more often than not, I think all that is practical. It looks perfect, and they do not go light on the gore here.
No, and I think one of the best things that Steven said while we were interviewing them was that this is something I think everybody needs to know, especially when it comes to the gore stuff, is the character of, Willie. He is living in a completely different world than our characters are. Like, to him, everybody around him is just like him. They're zany, out of this world fantasy characters, and he's treating their deaths as so. So when we say it gets gory and zany, it gets gory and zany. So be prepared for that. Now, I'm not saying that we're getting any Terrifier 2 bedroom scenes. We're not doing that. We're not getting the climax of Terrifier 3 here, but we're getting pretty fucking gory, guys. That's all I'm gonna say. It delivers for sure. And before we give you our final thoughts, I just wanted to send you a quick message from our friends over at Abracadabra NYC. Yes, a new sponsor on the channel. We are very happy to have them, and they too are very, very familiar with the cast and crew of Terrifier. So we're gonna show you a little bit from them, and yeah, then we'll get into our final thoughts. This video is sponsored by our good friends over at Abracadabra NYC, your one-stop shop for all your horror needs and necessities. By following our link in the description, you can see all that they have to offer, from horror collectibles, costumes, accessories, magic masks, and so much more. And if you find yourself in the New York area, please stop by their physical location. They have 3 floors of everything you see in the store and a unique, memorable experience to go along with it. So whether you're looking for something creepy, cutesy, or just super cool, they've got you covered at Abracadabra NYC. And thank you again to the good folks over at Abracadabra NYC. Yes, guys, Screamboat, this was, again, a big question mark. I think, like Luke said earlier, this was one where we were kind of hoping for the best. We knew a good majority before sitting down and seeing it of kind of what the chances, risks were that the team was going to do for this one. And I got to say, they really impressed me, and it really paid off. Dare I say, this is probably, in my book, top 3 public domain horror movies at this point. I think, like, this, Blood and Honey 2, and Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmares, those are my 3 favorites. As far as the order goes, you'll have to give me some time on that, but I mean, this is just such a fun movie that we do not see hardly at all. This is one, Luke, I think you said it in our interview as well, that you want to see this thing on like a VHS format.
Yes.
Really throw it back 80s, late 80s, early 90s style. This is going to be a absolute blast for you and your friends. I absolutely recommend going out and seeing this. So yeah, that's where I'm sitting with this bad boy. We're going with a recommend.
Yes, this one hits on so many different levels. It tugs at your heartstrings, especially if you're a fan of Leprechaun, Killer Clowns, anything like that. It really does, tap into the funness of those certain films. So it just brings everything across the board, from the comedy that works to the horror to that practical effects, David Howard Thornton's performance, creating a fun horror character off of something that has been established not in the horror space. And we already had 2 Mickey Mouse horror films, and we could not do with a third strike, and we did not at all. Screamboat, for me, was a knock out of the park for what we are looking for in these certain films. I'm liking what you're saying with those top 3 public domains. I didn't really thought about it until you brought it up, but those would probably be mine as well. Order, again, jury is out, but I'd have to reflect on that one. But Screamboat is an absolute win. This one, if you have the chance to go see it in the theater, definitely go out and support. We've seen The Mean One. We've seen Bury Me Twice from Stephen Lamort, and I will say this Screamboat is a perfect marriage from those 2 films, where there was something missing in both those, but he found what did work and brought them over to Screamboat, and then brought in a whole bunch of new elements that absolutely work. So this one, easy recommend. Go out to the theater, support this one if you can. This one, when it shows up on VOD, this is going to be such a fun party film to put on. Invite some friends over, have some fun, because there's a lot of laughs, there's a lot of gore, and they really do deliver on those kills.
100%, man. Definitely go check this thing out. It's going to be in select cinemas on April 2nd. So it's a Fandango event, I believe. So go ahead and check those things out. I'm sure one of the big theaters in your city is playing it. Go support it. Go show these guys some love, especially if you're part of the Terrifier fam, if you're part of the, public domain horror movies craze that we kind of, cultivated on the channel here. I think all of you guys, this is a big win. This is a huge win. It's something to go celebrate it. And yeah, I am very excited to see where this is going to fall for people, because I think a lot of people are going to feel the same way we do when it comes to this being in the top 3, probably even top 2 of these public domain horror movies. I think like this is just another example of when people say to us, why do they do these? Why do they make these movies? There's nothing here to gain. It's all a cash grab. This is going to be another example that I want to throw up to them and just say, look, somebody actually took the idea and had fun with it. They made it fun. They made it gory. They made it scary. They did everything that we love from classic horror. And this is a movie that wouldn't exist if we weren't able to do it with the public domain thing. Like, you could have done it with another mouse, maybe somebody named like Chester or something, but it wouldn't have had the same pop. It wouldn't have that same headline appeal. And I think that this is just like a perfect marriage, like Luke said, for all things that Steven's been building up to. And I gotta say, not just as his friend, but as a viewer, this was very satisfying. And I can't wait. I'm gonna do everything in my power to get out and see this thing in theaters when it drops, along with all of you guys. But yeah, that's going to wrap us up here for Screamboat, guys. Let us know if you're going to check this thing out on April 2nd. So just a couple days away. And yeah, I hope to see lots of good comments. If you hated it, well, I'm sorry. Go away. I don't want to talk to you. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead and let us know down below. We always accept everybody's opinions and go in it with stride. But yeah, other than that, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. Lots of big things coming up soon, guys. I know it's been a little slow on our side, but I promise there's a video that's going to be coming up in the next couple weeks that I think we've all been kind of waiting for. And it's going to be a whole new era, let's say, on this channel for old Luke and I. So I'm excited to bring you guys that. It's going to be pretty good. So, alrighty. Other than that, it's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
There's the temptation was, of course, to be first, right? To get it done as quickly as possible so that we can, capitalize on the name and the public domain-ness of it. But something that we really responded to when we made the Mean One was how many audience members and fans we connected with who wanted to revisit the film, not just the first viewing and, seeing getting the general story and the first things that they get on the first watch, but people who, and subsequent Christmases, have seen the film and watched it again and caught more of the Easter eggs. And so it became clear, we didn't want to make content, right? I didn't want to make a filler thing that you watch once and forget about. We wanted to make something that was not just a movie, but was an experience that you'd want to revisit, but where you remember sitting in the room with those people watching that crazy scene that I can't believe they did. So we sort of said, it's okay. We won't be the first out. That's fine. We really want to take our time with this because shooting these big, crazy kills takes time. Designing this big, beautiful suit or this tiny articulated puppet, it takes time. Finishing all of these visual effects, recording an actual orchestra in Macedonia, playing our score, a 30-piece string band. We don't need to do any of this, but I wanted to because we wanted to create something where you could see it on a big screen, listen to it loud, and experience that with other people. And it was fast to turn it around for sure, but we put our blood, sweat, and tears into this thing so that you could see it big, you could hear it loud, you could, hear the mouse from our amazing sound team running around behind you. If you're sitting in a theater with 5.1, you could really appreciate the detail of the ferry, seeing it on the big screen. You could hear that music and hear the performance of the musicians who played it. All of that stuff takes time. And I'm glad we, took the hard route pretty much everywhere on this film. And I think it shows on screen. And when people are sitting next to each other with strangers, laughing at a little murder mouse being mischievous, I'll know I'll have done my job right.
Do the horse shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, splash, 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 splash. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.